following program on Other Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations.
Tonight, we discuss the laws governing Sri Lanka's elections. A number of questions have arisen pertaining to Sri Lanka's local government elections and its legal standing. What are the provisions that are in place to allow for a free and fair election? What are the safety nets employed in Sri Lankan law to prevent the collapse of an electoral system during such uncertain times? Which institutions are in place to make the consideration of when an election should take place? Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of Law, Land and Liberty, where we bring to you essential information on current events and breaking it down for the layman. Now, with the elections being touted back and forth and the consensus in the public opinion on elections wavering here and there, we really do not have a clear, concise definition on exactly how the procedure and the process for elections are being carried out. And to get a better understanding on this, of course, we have someone who is not a new face on the show. We have President's Counsel, Silva. Thank you very much, sir, for taking the time to join us on our 50th episode of the program. Thank you very much. And as always, for the betterment of the viewer, we will be breaking this election topic down into easier segments so that we can really get into the nitty-gritty details. So first, we'll go with the provisions. So what are the provisions that are available for Sri Lanka's elections? And then, of course, the actual process of the elections and how we go about that for the presidential, parliamentary and the local government elections. And finally, we can talk about the controversial financing aspects and also the reforms, potential reforms, if we need reforms or not right now.
Hello, my name is Ranwala and I'm an international relations student. My question is on provisions. What are the provisions that govern elections in Sri Lanka?
Alright, so let's get right into the discussion now. As we mentioned, the first segment, provisions. Now, President's Counsel, we completely understand that we have provisions for the election, but a lot of us are not completely aware where exactly these provisions are. So if you could just break down to us, where exactly, what are our main provisions for holding elections in Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much for inviting me for the first one, and then thereafter the 50th. I'm happy that you all have come a long way, and after completing 49, you have invited me for the 50th one also. It's a prestige thing, and I am so proud of it. When you talk about elections, we can divide it into three at the moment, because the other election is not coming forward, that provincial things, but the presidential election and then parliamentary election and then we have so-called local government election. So those elections are very essential for the betterment of this country and to safeguard the people's right. So when we are talking about fundamental rights, it is clearly stated in 1978 Constitution that people's right to choose the necessary people where they want to represent them in various ways. So as far as the presidential elections are concerned, it is governed in 2 of 1981 Act, where it is clearly mentioned how the presidential election should be organized and how it goes. So when we talk about the elections, we have the Election Commission, where now at the moment we are concentrating on Election Commission. Earlier Election Commissioner was there, and then Election Commissioner General. Then after that, people thought it should be an independent body. Because of that, they have included into the Constitution by way of amendment that Election Commission should be there. So Election Commission is handling or organizing all elections in this country. So when the presidential election is concerned, it is very important we act together. All the people in this country act as one polling booth, and then they go to the polling booth and then they decide who is our president of this country. So there are various people, they give nomination papers, and accordingly, once they are eligible to come forward as presidential candidate, they will be considered by the election commission, and once the nomination are accepted, then they will go to elections. Thereafter, we say first person passing the 50 mark, the 50 plus 1 is the important area where if a person gets more than that amount, that percentage, then he will be eligible for the election as the president of this country. Now, various people, they are talking about the president after he is dead, or he is abandoned his post, or he was overruled, his position is vacated by way of a Supreme Court order. Then what will happen? Now, president will be appointed for a period of 5 years. When that period, before the lapse of that period, if a president is not there, then the constitution itself says various things to be taken up. So then thereafter, automatically, once the president is not there, the prime minister will take over for a temporary period. Within that temporary period, the parliament should appoint a person by way of majority. So that is what we had earlier. Because of that majority vote, present president was appointed. The Ranil Wickremesinghe, whether he was appointed by a list member or he was appointed by the election, that's a different matter. The members of the parliament, they have to nominate a person or any other people. Then thereafter, they will, if there are one more people, then they will go for a election within the parliament, and thereafter they will appoint a person. So by way of majority. So if that person is elected, we can't say it is not people's request, people's choice. We can't say that, because constitution is very clear with regard to the balance period. Now, once he is appointed as the president or elected as a president by a parliament, he can go up to that balance period only. He can't say that I have been appointed now, then I will go for 5 years. No, you can't do that. The balance period is very essential, and it is very clearly stated. So once the constitution says like that, nobody can ask for an election till that 5-year period is over. So once the 5-year period is over, automatically the present president has to go for an election. So that is how the presidential election goes. We are going for the polling booths as one polling booth. They will consider it as one polling booth, and then thereafter we will appoint that. And halfway through, if he is not there, then the parliament will appoint. That is how it goes. Then the second one is the parliament election. Parliament election also, after 5-year period is over, or else now according to the new amendment, after 1.5 years period is over, 2.5 years period is over, then the president has the power to dissolve the parliament before 5-year period is lapsed. Apart from that, there is another way of doing that. If the members of the parliament, the parliamentarians, if they are in a position to get together and give a resolution by a 2/3 majority that we want the parliament to be dissolved, then president has no right. He has to adhere to that request. So that is how the constitution says. Once the parliament election is announced, then the election commission has the power to organize it and conduct the election. Now the third one is the so-called local government election. So now we are talking about local government election. The important factor would be it's a fundamental right of the people, but the people should understand this particular local government election will not change the positions of president or the parliament. It will not give any effect to the present situation. It will only appoint 8,700 odd people to the local government, and then they will work for the betterment of the country. So for that, merely because somebody gets the majority, that does not mean that they are in a position to govern the country. They can't ask the president to go home because our party got the majority. So local government election is very important. It was enacted in 1946. So far away, because in Britain it is being recognized is the people's choice, and they are governing the areas. So local government elections are very important for the people to get their day-to-day things done. So without going to the members of the parliament or without calling the president, they can go their member of that area and ask for the help. So for that, in that case, it is important for the people to get the benefit. So that is how this local government election also should be considered, and it is for a period of 4 years. So once the 4-year period is over, it is if the government is not in a position to have the elections again, then the minister can extend for another year. That is final. After that period is over, automatically it will be dissolved. So once it is now the local government, all the local governments in this country, there are 341 local government. Out of that, 340 are dissolved because LPTA election was held later. So because of that, they have some time to go ahead. And to 340, out of that 340, 29 are municipal council, and 36 are urban council, and 275 Pradesha Sabhas. So as far as the municipal council are concerned, it is the commissioner who is going to control that particular municipal council till the local government elections are held. And then for the 36 UC, urban council, and then 275 Pradesh Sabhas, it is the secretaries who are handling those matters till the local government elections are being held.
So that means now, sir, we understand that there is multiple provisions that are in place, you know, what has to happen and how it should go from where, and exactly where the hierarchy is as well on the procedure of the elections. Now we understand that the constitution, just circling back to our initial point, the actual legislature of elections, we understand the constitution is like the main provision of elections and all. Now on re-election and on appointing now local government and all, are there other pieces of legislature that are branched out that enforce election law, like ordinances and acts, and how does that actually play into the current context?
And as I mentioned earlier, the presidential election is governed by a special act called 1981. One of 1981, at the same time, 2 of 81 is the presidential, parliament election 1 of 81, and then local government, as I said, there is a special act where 1946 it has been enacted. So that is being amended, and then it is the enactment where it says how it should be conducted, elections are conducted, and thereafter, if the period is over, what sort of action the present governing body can take. So this is how I said. Now from after dissolving, automatically it is dissolved, and for this 340 local government, there are commissions or the secretaries at the moment. They have the power in consultation with the governors. They can do things that are needed for the benefit of people.
I see. And now building on that, sir, now we understand that all three different elections have three different procedures, obviously depending on exactly what is in play and how many now for local government. There's, as you mentioned, there's 341.
Three elections are governed by three separate acts.
Three separate acts. So that's exactly where I want to direct your attention to, sir. Is there a vast fundamental difference between the three different acts? Is there no possibility of it having similarities, or is it completely just three in itself?
They are their own way, own acts. They have their own way of conducting, having those.
So that means right now in the current context with local government elections all, that is the only act that has been.
That's right. And then, but we have to adhere to the Constitution as well as the Election Commission. Now, they have all the powers to conduct the election. But at the moment, whether they are in a position to conduct the election with this atmosphere is the issue here. So sometimes, now we can go back to 2014 where the election are being postponed for some other reason. So the elections are held, they were held in 2018. Then only now we have come to this 2022 and it has been extended as legally the minister can extend for another year, and now 2023 it has been lapsed.
And now quickly, before we go into a break, sir, about gazette notifications. Now, I understand that a lot of laymen that are watching us have questions regarding exactly how those play in for the provisions of elections, especially in the current context. Could you please explain to us exactly what authority that has over the current procedure of the elections, gazette notifications, sir?
Gazette notification will be published by the Election Commission. So now the government can't interfere with that. The Election Commission should go in consultation with the Finance Ministry as well as the Printing Department, and then thereafter they will publish various gazettes. So the gazette notification can be, they are announcing the election date and then the postal votes. Likewise, various things can be announced, or if they want to do away with that, the Election Commission has the power to do that. So if they are doing it within the frame of the law, then they can do so. Otherwise, if they are going beyond that, people can say you are violating our fundamental rights.
I see. Well, I mean, I guess that is a very comprehensive understanding of exactly where the provisions are and how it is enacted and the differences, of course. Before we get into the process, more on the process, considering we already discussed a little bit of it, we will take a short commercial break. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. Stay with us.
And I'm a biology student, and my question is on election procedure. What procedures are in place for each election in Sri Lanka's legislature?
Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We were in conversation with President's Counsel UR Silva. We were talking about the elections and exactly what the provisions and the process is exactly. So now that we have the basics down, where our provisions lie and the basic outline of the process. Now, considering the current context where the local government elections has been a delay, so where exactly in this kind of an issue, what is the legal process? How do we go about it legally when considering the current local government elections and all? Apart from the ideal process, what exactly should be happening now in a legal context, sir?
As far as the legal context is concerned, people have the right to go before a Supreme Court or to Court of Appeal by way of a writ application, and they can ask our fundamental rights are being violated by not having the election. So the government cannot say that we are not going to have election. But if they are in a position to show that this is what we are expecting to do and we have allocated the necessary funds, but at the moment we are not in a position to release the whole amount, and because of that it's been delayed. So if they are going to say that, they must go to court and explain it to court. It is the court should decide whether the government's stance is correct or not. They are purposely violating this of the people's fundamental rights, or it is the situation of this country delayed the election. So that aspect already some people have gone to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in one case has given an order to state that please don't do away with this particular amount which you all have allocated during the budget speech. That is the fundamental thing that had been announced by the Supreme Court in their order. That's a temporary order. It is not going against Parliament. I am not in agreement with the way that a Parliament is going to call the judges. There is no necessity. They have not asked them to show cause, or they are not asked them to say that if they are not going to have the election, we will call you to say that you all have violated. No, that is not the issue. Temporarily, they have stated, the Supreme Court has stated that please don't forget the amount which you all have allocated during the 2023 budget. So that amount should be there. But that does not mean you should release immediately or within this 7 days or 10 days. In step by step, they can do so. What do you mean by allocating this amount? That is also should be considered by the Supreme Court. And if they want, if the commissioner, election commission is not going to have it in a proper way, and if they are violating the important rules or the necessary amount, the things that are there in the Act, if they are violating it, then they can go to Court of Appeal by way of a writ application. They can direct, the Court of Appeal can direct the Commission to do this. And it is your duty to adhere to the things that are there in the Act. So they can't play hide and seek. But we have to understand, within this situation, we are struggling. So at the moment, my personal view is that local government elections are necessary. Their members are very important. At the same time, I must say that they never thought to reduce that amount. I want to inform you, in December, 14th of December, President called the Election Commission and asked to reduce that amount. If they want, they can consult the Attorney General and they can prepare an amendment, and then thereafter, the 8,000 odd amount can be reduced to 5,000. It is also very important, because now we must understand, when we are appointing those people, we have to look after them. We have to allocate some money for their day-to-day expenses. So those matters, merely because you allocate some money for the conducting of election, that does not mean that all things will be okay thereafter. Because now the government should look after the members of those local government bodies. They can't say you are not being paid. And merely because they are appointed, that does not mean they are going to work on their own. They have to have staff also, other equipment. So all these things are very necessary when they are having this election. So that is why it is important to realize, people can go to courts and argue this matter. The court will consider both parties or any other interested parties as well, and then thereafter finally they give an order. In the meantime, because of the present situation, I was told that we saw it in news also that the secretary to the finance ministry, he has given an affidavit. So the court should go into that also. They will go into that and they will consider the present situation, because money is more important. This is a crucial situation where they are not going to have it immediately. Because why? Because of the money problem. So that is the main concern Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal should consider. So if the court is of the view that the secretary to the finance ministry purposely, or the finance minister purposely not allocate or not giving or not releasing the money, then of course Supreme Court can give a ruling for that, order for that. So at the moment I want to inform, out of that allocation they have given 30 and 70 million to the Election Commission, and for the police for the preparation 20 million, and for the government printer 40 million odd. So at the moment I saw in news that the government printer has stated out of the necessary local government areas, they have prepared part of that, but the balance part they need money. So I personally believe this election should be held in due course, but the opposition people or the other interested parties should realize that this is a crucial stage where we are struggling to come out with the way that the things that had happened earlier. So we are little by little coming out of that. So then thereafter, once it is come to a certain level, then we can have the local government election.
I see. Well, that means we have to wait for some level of calm before we can proceed with local elections. But now another question that develops, sir, is now the role that the courts play, like you just mentioned, in the current context. How will that compare if this was a parliamentary problem or a presidential election problem? Would there be a difference in how the courts would react, or is it still the same legal procedure?
Same legal procedure, where this is of course why if the people are of the view that the elections are not being held, purposely they are not, they are violating the provisions of the Act, then as I told you, the remedy would be they can go to Supreme Court. Even the parliament elections also, if they are purposely postponing it, then of course the same procedure. But the Supreme Court has the power to decide whether by doing that act, is it a fundamental right violation. If it is so, then they will declare that people's rights have been violated by the authorities. So that's the same thing in various areas, but different acts are governed in 3 different elections. But the fact remains that in this particular situation, already people have gone, but immediately they can't give an order, and the Attorney General also coming out with various suggestions and their views also. So it is the way that we should look at in broad way. If you are looking at a broader picture, then you can realize that it should be done, but it is this situation or something after 2-3 months.
And now, so actually that's a very important breakdown that you just gave us, which I'd like to add to a little bit, sir. Now, you mentioned about exactly proceeding with the elections in due course. Now, if you could really break it down for the layman and explain to us which specific institutions or which stakeholders are responsible in the consideration of making an election take place. Now, we understand that there are different contexts as to how an election can proceed. There's a certain time period. But apart from that, are there other stakeholders stakeholders that can contribute to the consideration of taking place of an election?
Yes, we all get together and do that, because now if we are going to have process and then we are going to have strikes, so it will affect the election process, because now then the government can't do anything by imposing various acts, and then now Essential Service Act was implemented. So because of that, the government has to go, the president has to go before parliament within 10 days and then get the approval to curtail the people coming out to street. And if they are not working, how can we earn money? And then the other important, if the people are out on the streets, then tourists, they will say that we are not in a position to come to Sri Lanka. So those matters are there. So we should understand this is very important. It's a fundamental right. Yes, that's perfectly right. But it will not certainly change the present situation. Because as I told you earlier, by appointing these people, we can get our work done. But in the whole, that country will not get anything changed. The present president will not go, and the parliament will not go. So then, if that is the case, then I will also say we must have that. Because other people can say, we want to appoint another set of people to the parliament. We want to appoint, but by appointing, they are the people who are going to run the country. And if the presidential elections are due, then we said we should say it should be done, because you can't have your own way. You have to have the president election, because we want to appoint another suitable person for this post. So those things are there. If it is so, then it's an essential thing. But here, of course, it is important, it's a fundamental right, but not the correct way of doing it at this stage. And this is not the proper time to have it, but within few months we will have it, certainly, because it's important to have the work done with the local government people.
I see, and there's a lot more to discuss, especially considering the financial aspect. Of course, there's a little bit more to discuss on that as well, and also on potential reforms. But before that, let's take a very short commercial break. Stay with us on Law, Land and Liberty.
And I'm a law student of Sri Lanka Law College. My question is on reforms. Are reforms to Sri Lanka's election laws necessary?
Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We were just in discussion on the elections and the legal aspect of it in Sri Lanka. Joining with me is President's Counsel Silva. Thank you very much, sir. Once again, we are in our final segment. There's still a lot more to break down regarding this question, but let's pick up right where we left off in the previous segment, where we were talking about the finance aspect of it. That is exactly what is the problem right now with the local government elections. Now, where are the provisions, and what exactly are the provisions that really enable the financing of this election by the finance minister? Now, like the actual broken down process of it. So could you explain to us?
Yes, as far as the financial aspects are concerned, it is the parliament. It is the parliament under the 1978 constitution. It is very clearly states that parliament has the power or the control over the money that had been allocated to various areas, and they are the people who are allocating. That is why we call the budget speech. When the budget speech is there, the various allocations will be there. So in this particular situation, for the 2023 whole year, it has been named for 8 to 10 billion. 8 to 10 billion for the whole year. So this is what I am emphasizing. people think, or the opposition people, they think this money, once it is announced, it should be kept in a safety place where when it is necessary, you get it and spend it. No, that is not correct. It has been allocated and they are expecting, those are expecting things. If the people get together and work hard, money will come to the government. And this is not, government means that not the president or the cabinet minister. The government is the controlling body. So then only the finance ministry can spend that money. So merely because you say that 8 billion have been allocated, we want that and please give us. No. At the same time, the Supreme Court also has mentioned that 8 to 10 billion you have prepared to spend, don't reduce it or don't say that we are not going to give that. It should be given. But they are giving it in installments. So that is why we say the controlling body is the Parliament. Parliament should come to a conclusion whether it is appropriate to have 8,000 odd people to be appointed as the members for those government, local government area, council, but whether it should be curtailed to 5,000. So that is the matter for the Parliament to decide. If the parliamentarians are not interested in reducing that, it will affect the finance situation of this country. So it is important where we should get together and realize this is a very important area, but at the same time, if we are going to spend a lot of money unnecessarily, then it will affect to the finance situation of this country.
And now to build on exactly the financial issue that we have now, so you mentioned that it's all a projected outcome, of course. The funds are not readily available just to take from storage and all. But I just want to ask you a question stemming from that. Has there been a precedent for this kind of financial delay for elections before? And has that been legally recorded? Has there been a process?
No. When you ask that question, we have to go back and see elections are being postponed for various situations and various purposes. And during even these parliamentary elections also, it has been postponed. And then provincial council election, we don't know on what day it is going to have. So that is the parliamentarians are there to consider that, because there was an act they tried to implement, but unfortunately it was not went again. And thereafter the elections are kept away. So that is the provincial council. Then the governors are controlling at the moment. So as far as these local governments are also concerned, earlier, previous time, it has been postponed for not this purpose, for some other reason, but nobody was interested about that. Now only they are concerned about this election, but it has been postponed and it was held in 2018. So likewise, it has been happening also, but at this stage, this particular postponement because of the financial situation, it was never happened earlier, because we have the ability to get some loans and then go ahead. So this time we couldn't do those things, and now we can't print the notes also, money also there is a prohibition. So because of that, we have to use the allocated money, or the expected money is coming, then only we can spend. If to get that money, we have to look after other things also. Essential items should be looked after. Otherwise, we have to go to a lot of problems will happen future also if we are not going to ignore those. If we are going to ignore those things, it will be a problem. So people can say various things. It is the duty of the government to look after all the people of this country, not a few people who are on the street. So that is why we say we must emphasize that this particular local government election should be held, but it should be held in due course, and we must have other things first. The essential items, things should be looked after by the government.
And also to build on that now, sir, there has to be, of course, priorities made regarding the current situation. There are a lot of restrictions, that's true, but just wanted to ask you, sir, now, are there no safety nets that have been recorded in our legislature, in not specifically in just circumstances such as these where there's a financing issue, but are there no other safety nets that have been in place, precautionary measures in case there's a delay regarding this issue? This is the ordinance that you should turn to, or this is what should be done according to the law, or where the Supreme Court is involved in the protection of the right for an election. Is there such a safety net, or is there none such?
No. There are provisions, and according to the provision, you can't control the financial situation. So if the authorities are purposely doing it without divulging the exact position or the exact situation, then there's a problem. If the problem is there and then situation is important, then the Supreme Court or the other Court of Appeal will consider that factor. So merely because you have to have election, whether you have money or not, you have to have, no, there is no such provision like that. Since it is the financial situation is concerned, we can't give mandatory laws or mandatory sections cannot be implemented as far as the financial situations are concerned. But whether they are going to have it, if we are spending unnecessarily, if we are importing unnecessary items to country, we have the dollar problem also. So merely because the IMF is coming forward, that does not mean our problems are solved in fortnight. But it will give some effect to the other countries to see these people are coming out, and then they are trying to come out with the past situation. So if we are ready to help them, then we can have our other things done. So that is why I said this election will not change the mandate of the parliament or the president itself. Since it is not going to do that type of a thing, we can wait for some time to get the benefit of that local election.
All right, sir. And finally, I would like to ask you, I think this is the million-dollar question, is there a potential for reform when regarding election ordinances and election acts? Now, we have three different ones, as we just learned in the prior segment, and it pertains to the three different elections. Is there a necessity? Is there a potential for reform? Do you believe that the courts can intervene in a better way? Is there a way for the law to be put forth in a way where it can be enforced much more justiciably, or maybe in a method that allows for more of a judicial process when considering elections? Or is there no such need for a reform of that sort?
Yes, for the second one is the answer, I think. There is no such need at the moment as far as this particular problem is concerned. We are talking about the financial problem. So we can't, if we have money and if we are having savings, then easily we can have election. Now, even if we have the money and if we are not going to have the election, purposely we are postponing it for the benefit of that governing body, then it will be a problem. You can go to Supreme Court. There are enough provisions, and it's a fundamental right violation. So Supreme Court will definitely say you should have the election. But at this stage, it is difficult as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Also, they can't just give a direction, or they can't force the government to have it, because it is the parliament who are allocating the money. Already they have predicted the money. If the money is available with the finance ministry, definitely they should come with the money by installments. So within this 2023 period, the Supreme Court has stated that you can't do away with that. You have to allocate that money and give it for the election. So it is already they have done it to some extent. So now it is up to the government to do it by way of installments and have the election in near future.
All right. Unfortunately, even though there's a lot more to discuss regarding this topic, time has come against us. We have time constraints, but I'm pretty sure that the next time you join us on the show, sir, we can divulge further into this topic and exactly figure out what the law is around much more topics in the future. Thank you very much for joining me, sir, on this program.
Thank you so much. Again, I must say it's a thing that I love to come, because you all are giving more information to the people to get the knowledge. Otherwise, people will think various things without going into the matters. So it's a privilege to be with you.
All right. So as a nation of democracy, the functions of an election are arguably the most pivotal public right in Sri Lankan citizens' arsenal. Rigoberta Menchú is a quiche Guatemalan human rights activist and Nobel Peace Prize laureate who has dedicated her life to publicizing the rights of Guatemala's indigenous peoples during and after the Guatemalan Civil War. We leave you with her words. Peace cannot exist without justice. Justice cannot exist without fairness. Fairness cannot exist without development. Development cannot exist without democracy, and democracy cannot exist without respect for the identity and worth of cultures and peoples. That's all from us here at Law, Land and Liberty. If you missed today's program, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/otherthanenglish. I'm Anuradha Wickramasinghe. Have a good night.